What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we are going to be doing a revisit of a previous video that I did in the past. We are going to go through the depth chart today. We're going to go through formation subs, how they intertwine, and how you can use them to make sure your team is set up for success every time you hit play game. So I went ahead and I created a new franchise file, and we're going to go over the different options that will show you exactly what to do when it comes to adjusting the lineup that you have on the field. So first one is listed as depth chart under your manage roster tab, and this is where you sort of put down the groundwork. Okay, so like this is going to be like your baseline set, and then you can use formation subs, which we'll go over in a little bit, to fine tune who is in and who is out every time your team hits the field. So we're going to go through them position by position because some positions require a little bit more work than the others, and we'll just go over everything. So first things first, quarterback. This one you don't have to worry about. There's no extra special thing with this one. It's whoever's QB1 listed here. This is who's going to be your starting quarterback in every formation. When you get to halfback, though, there are some additional things that you have to worry about. So your halfback one here is for your base setting. So this is more like some of your single back sets, a few of your shotguns, some I formation, your base package setting for halfback. There's a different one for a lot of the shotgun formations, and there's also a different one for like power formations where maybe you have two tight ends on the field, maybe you are in goal line situation, and I'm going to show you all three of those. So this halfback setting, sometimes depending on the playbook, can actually not even give this person starting snaps. Like they will not be on the field as much as you think they will, depending on how much shotgun you're running or whatever the case is. So you really need to make sure that these settings are set up properly if you want a certain running back to be getting a majority of your carries, or if you have multiple running backs and you want them in specific situations. So starting halfback here under just HB, that is for single back sets, some shotgun sets, and some of your standard I form sets. There's other ones also like pistol, strong eye, weak eye, that you will see that this halfback is in. And then when you go over back this way towards the back end here, you're going to find this 3DRB. This stands for third down running back. I'm pretty sure that's what it means. 3 down back. I don't know what it means, but all I know is that this is the spot that you have to put in if you want a player to be in on those shotgun formations. This is really where it's going to come into play. This one is only going to matter for your shotgun situation. So if you want a different guy in, or if you want to make sure that like Aaron Jones here is listed for that shotgun role, this is where you want them to be. So later on, we're going to come back and we're going to switch things up, and I'm going to show you the formation subs on this. But for now, we'll just keep moving on through the depth chart. The second option for running backs is right next to it. So one down, which is PWHB, or power halfback. And this is for what you guys are thinking. This is for your goal line sets, your double tight end sets, you know, the bigger sets where power running is more what you're going to be doing rather than, you know, zone running or just straight away normal, you know, run plays. So there are three different areas you have to hit. Fullback is the same as the quarterback. If they're listed here as fullback, they're the fullback. There's no specialty here. And then we come to wide receivers, and this one has its own twist to it. Wide receiver has one other option far in the back area, like I just showed you with the third down back and the power back. And this one really matters when it comes to the lineup of these receivers. So the way I like to explain this for people is this section here, the wide receiver section, is going to be for your outside receivers. It has no bearing on the slot receiver that you have in your setting or the inside receivers. So slot just means inside if you're not aware of that. So if you hear slot wide receiver or slot corner, it just means that when you're looking at the formation, you have your guys on the outside, you have like one guy lined up on the inside like this, sometimes two. That is your slot on offense, your slot receiver. So this situation here, wide receiver, only outside, not inside. All right, so when you're looking at this formation, this is a 4 receiver set, okay? This here is probably your tight end. A lot of times you'll see this in a tight end sort of like flexes out into a slot. Sometimes it's a 4th wide receiver. We're going to ignore this guy. We're just worried about these two and this guy over here. So if we're looking at our wide receivers, our outside positions, this guy on the left is going to be wide receiver 1. This guy on the right is going to be wide receiver 2. We'll come back to this in a second, though, so I can show you about the slot, because this here is the slot receiver. This guy right here. So now looking at this, your top wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, is going to be the guy that was on the left side in the red route. Jordan Addison is going to be the guy on the right side that we just saw in that formation. Now, when you go over to this back end here for SLWR or slot wide receiver, it shows Brandon Powell here first, which means that by default, he is going to be this guy right here in the middle. So if you have a slot wide receiver 1, they are going to be this guy right here. The first inside receiver you have is going to be the number 1 in that situation. And now if this guy, let's say both of these are slot receivers, it's not a tight end, then how you would see that is slot wide receiver 1, slot wide receiver 2, which would mean that we would have Brandon Powell and Trent Sherfield on the field at the same time in those 2 inside positions. So this here is your inside wide receiver setting, and this here is your outside wide receiver setting. And something that I should have mentioned earlier is these special formations that I've been showing you guys over here, these take precedence over the standard one that I've been telling you about. So for instance, this wide receiver, the slot wide, so for instance, the slot wide receiver here, if you have, say, Justin Jefferson listed here instead, when you go into a three situation, if you have Justin Jefferson listed here as your slot wide receiver, as your number 1 slot wide receiver, and he is listed as your number 1 wide receiver, the slot wide receiver is going to take precedence over the outside wide receiver. What means then is in that same situation, if we have Justin Jefferson, who I told you before is right here, and he is also listed as the number 1 slot wide receiver, it's going to take precedence over the fact that he's listed 1 here, and it's going to put him here in this formation. And then how they're going to move somebody up is because we're on the outside wide receivers, it is then going to pull Brandon Powell, who is listed as the 3rd wide receiver on the outside, up. It's going to move Addison over, and it's going to sort of just shift everybody up because the slot wide receiver will take precedence in the depth chart according to what you have set on this setting here in the normal wide receiver. Now moving on to tight ends. This one is very straightforward, just like quarterbacks and fullbacks. If it's tight end 1 here, it's tight end 1 on every formation. You also have tight end 2 and tight end 3, and it's just going to follow that order. If you have 2 tight end sets, it'll be Hawkinson and then Oliver. If you have 3 tight ends, it's going to be Hawkinson, Oliver, and Tynion. There's nothing special here. The reason why you want to make sure you have 3 decent tight ends is because there are some sets that run passing situations out of 3 tight ends that are very good to use. And if you don't have 3 quality guys, or let's say you have a guy that's hurt, it's going to pull up a left tackle or a right tackle on you, and that's who's going to be lining up out there, which could be good if you don't want to pass out of it, give you an extra lineman on the field. But just keep that in mind if you are running short on tight ends, or if you have an injury, you want to make sure you have 3 going into game day, because if one of these guys gets hurt, you're going to end up with a lineman in those formations. The entire offensive line is there's nothing really to worry about. It's just follows this accordingly. There's no special set for it. There's nothing else. It's just who's first, who's second, and that's all. So this whole thing just follows suit exactly how you would think that you would have to, because this doesn't have any special settings for it. All right, so now we get to the defense, and the defense is where things can get a little tricky, especially if you're not too familiar with how defensive formations come together and what those different positions mean in those different situations. So this is going to be a longer part of the video, and I just want to make sure that you guys fully understand how this works, okay? So the Vikings run a 3-4 defense. Now what that means is you have 3 down linemen and you have 4 linebackers in the formation, in the front 7. The front 7 is a term I use a lot, and all that means is your linebackers and your defensive line. That is the front 7. Both formations that we're going to talk about have a front 7. It's just laid out a little bit differently depending on which formation you're in. So in a 3-4, the defensive ends, as you'll see here with like Jonathan Bullard here, he is 290 pounds. So he is like a really big defensive end, or he's a little bit lighter defensive tackle. Usually if you see a defensive tackle, they're about 300 plus, and they're there to plug the holes, plug the lanes, and make sure that guys aren't making a lot of room for the running backs to come through, okay? The defensive ends have one of 2 jobs depending on the formation. Now in a 3-4, they are more the in-between. They're not necessarily just the guys that are supposed to pass rush. They're also the guys that are supposed to help stop the run. So they plug up the gaps as well as the defensive tackles do. That's why they're a little bit bigger. So you have your left end, your right end, and then you have your D tackle. So, and how this works in a 3-4 is it's just like the offensive lineman. Your number 1 is your starter in your base setting 3-4 for left end, right end, and D tackle. Okay, so we're gonna be looking at some play art for the 3-4, and then I'll show you the 4-3, and then I'll explain the difference between the two. So when you are looking at this play art here, these 3 guys down here, they have a square. Okay, you see that? I hope you guys can see that. I know it's not the biggest on my screen, but regardless, there's 3 squares, which is indicating your defensive ends or your defensive linemen. And then you have these that are circles that are the linebackers. And then the X's mean defensive secondary. So cornerbacks and safeties. So that is how it's always going to look on any play art you look at. So squares, linemen, circles, linebacker, X's, secondary. And now how they look at this in the depth chart and what they mean by it is your left end is actually looks like your right end. So you have to sort of pretend that you're looking at it upside down, essentially. That is how they're seeing it. So you're going to see it this way, but they are telling you the positions from flipped over. So over here is actually your left end, and then this is your right end, and this of course is your D tackle. And then this here is your your left outside linebacker. This is your right outside linebacker, and then this is your middle linebackers here in the middle. So now that we've saw the layout for that, here is your left end, Jonathan Bullard. Here is your right end, Jerry Tillery, and then here is your defensive tackle, Harrison Phillips. So in this situation, in our base setting, when we are in that 3-4 look, the number 1s on these 3 are going to be on the field. I'm going to leave it at that and then show you a 4-3 formation first, and then I'm going to tie it all together for you. So buckle up. We are going to be talking about this stuff a lot. So now we're going to use the 49ers for the 4-3 defense. So when you have a 4-3 defense, that means you have 4 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers as opposed to 3 linemen and 4 linebackers. So it just it takes one of the linebackers from the 3-4 and it puts them down on the line, or vice versa, whichever one you want to consider. It takes one of the linemen and puts them up at the linebacker. Doesn't matter how you view it, it means the same thing. And you can see that this defensive end, Nick Bosa, is much more athletic looking, right? He is more faster. He's got like finesse moves. He is a speed rusher. He is a pass rusher. Whereas Bullard is more of a bigger guy meant to sort of be able to rush the passer, but his primary responsibility is to, shore up the gaps and put some pressure on the interior of the line because they have different responsibilities. So in this scenario, when you have a 4-3, Nick Bosa will be your starter on the right side of that formation. Like I said, it's flip-flopped. Your right end is Leonard Floyd, so he'll be on the other end. And now in the defensive tackle area, it's your 1 and 2 that are on the field together. So it would be Hargrave and Givens that are on the field at the same time in a 4-3. And here is what that defensive formation looks like on play art. So now you can see here we have 4 squares, which means lineman, and 3 circles, which means linebacker. So these 2 positions are your D tackle 1 and D tackle 2. You have your left end here and your right end here. And then you have 1 middle linebacker, outside linebacker, okay? So when you have a 4-3 front, you are going to want a guy that's a little bit bigger, like Hargrave here, he's 305, but then sometimes you're going to want a different defensive tackle that's more of like almost like a 3-4 end, right? This guy here, Givens, is 285. He's a little bit closer in size to Jonathan Bullard than he is to Hargrave, which means that he is more of an athletic type of D tackle. You will hear this term be called a 3 technique around, like if you're watching NFL or if you're playing the game or whatever. That is sort of what a 3 technique is. They are sort of a guy that can do multitude of things on the D line. They're more of a jack of all trades from the D tackle position. They have pass rush moves. They are good at understanding what's going on in the defense, and they're good at stopping the run. So you want a guy who his primary job is to just plug them holes up, and you want a guy that is more in between. So that way they can help in both areas depending on the situation. It makes them more flexible. Whereas in a 3-4, your D tackle just needs to be a big dude. He needs to be able to sit in the lane in the middle all by himself and occupy like 2 people usually. Okay, that's where that differs here. Now in a 4-3, you have 2 guys in the middle that both can apply pressure to both of like the guard, center, and the other guard. So they work together as a tandem to take on those 3 guys to allow the one-on-one matchups on the outside for their edge rushers. And now you might be wondering, well, you didn't talk about edge rushing with a 3-4. That is because they are the linebackers in a 3-4. So let me go back and show you that now with the Vikings. So with the Vikings, they run a 3-4. So they have the bigger defensive ends, right? Not exactly the edge rushers, not exactly the pass rush guys that you need to just go at the quarterback, not a Micah Parsons type, right? And then they have the big man in the middle to shore up the middle of the field. Well, now looking at the outside linebackers in this formation, Dallas Turner looks a heck of a lot closer to Nick Bosa than he does to a middle linebacker like Blake Cashman. And that is because in a 3-4, the stand-up outside linebacker's primary responsibility is to be the edge rushers that attack the edges of the pocket and get after the quarterback. And that is one of the biggest differences between these two defenses, is that the linebackers are actually standing up. Now, they will have to sometimes drop back into coverage and help in zone. Not usually man coverage, but most of the time they are rushing the passer. So in a 3-4, you have your outside linebackers are the ones that go after the quarterback. And that is why when you look at this setting here, you will see that these two circles for linebackers are so close to the line in a 3-4 because they are essentially a part of the defensive line. It's almost like you have a 5-man front in a 3-4, if that makes sense. It's just 2 of the 5 are linebackers, so it doesn't call it a 5-2, but there is a formation called that. But that is more advanced stuff. We're worried about the basics here, okay? So when you're 3-4 defense, your outside linebackers are the ones that sort of play up on the line, but they are standing up, and their job for the most part is to rush the passer. Once in a while, they'll have a guy drop back, like you see the guy on the right side of the screen here doing, or sorry, the left side, depending on your understanding of Madden. He drops off into coverage, and this is the way to disguise who's coming and who's going, right? So that is your biggest difference in a 3-4. So going back to the depth chart now, your outside linebackers here with Dallas Turner is your edge rusher. Same with your right outside linebacker here in Andrew Van Ginkel. Now, your best ability to have success is to find guys that can not only drop into coverage but edge rush the passer. But if you have to choose one, you want guys that can pass rush, because that is what I would say 60 to 65% of their job duty is on any given play. And then what it looks like for your depth chart in a 3-4 is your middle linebackers will be just like your defensive tackles in a 4-3. It's your number 1 and your number 2 on the field in the middle. And those are the guys that are considered they drop back in the coverage, they help in the run game. You'll hear people refer to these, and myself, as off-ball linebackers, because they are not primarily just going straight at the football. They're not just rushing the passer. They are helping in the run game, and then they drop back into zone coverage to help out the secondary and to keep things in front of them and to know what's going on. And when you go over to the 49ers here, who run a 4-3 instead of a 3-4, you will see that their outside linebackers are much different. Devontae Campbell is 232 pounds. He's a little bit quicker. He has the ability to drop into pass coverage into zone. Fred Warner, very good linebacker, off-ball linebacker. He's fast. He knows how to play coverages, and he can help in the run game. Same with Dre Greenlaw. So a very different type of player, but they are still in the same positioning because Madden doesn't have a different setting for this. I almost wish that Madden would have, instead of having like defensive ends and outside linebackers, I almost wish they would have D linemen, edge rushers, and off-ball linebackers. I feel like that would be a better suiting, and it would make much more sense for people playing this game, because I have so many people that I talk to that have no clue that this is even a thing. Honest to God. And this is you. I'm glad that you found this. I hope this explains it to you. You'll probably be like, that makes so much sense now. But I've saw so many people that don't understand this, and I think a lot of it has to do with the way Madden explains this stuff, or doesn't explain this stuff. So you have to go off of what your playbook is and what kind of players you have to understand what kind of defense you need to be in. So now, if you run a 3-4 defense, the specialty settings, like we looked at for halfbacks and wide receivers, are very, very important to you. Okay. The reason for that is because in a 3-4 defense, in a pass rushing situation, like if you go to nickel defense or dime defense, about 90% of those plays and those formations are going to run out of a 4-3 front, which means that it's going to be 2 D tackles and 2 defensive ends on the line for you to rush the passer. It's not going to be 1, 1, and 1 like you saw with the 3-4, which means you need different types of players in there. So when you go to the specialty settings down here, you're going to find RLE, RRE, and RDT. And what that means is rushing left end, rushing right end, and rushing D tackle. And this is for nickel and dime sets when you have more of a 4-3 front, because most defenses run out of a 4-3 front, especially nowadays, because of the fact that so many teams are playing primarily nickel, not much dime, but nickel is like almost a base setting at this point, and 90% of nickel formations are going to be out of a 4-3 set. So you definitely need to make sure, if you are running a 3-4, that you go through this and make sure your players are correct, because you are not going to want, like you can see here in the overalls, because the overalls will change based off of their archetype. You'll see the guys that are considered pass rushers have a high rating here, and the guys like Jonathan Bullard, who was like a 72 in the normal setting, is down to a 63 because he is not a pass rusher. He does not have finesse moves to him to be able to play on the outside and go against tackles. So in this setting, if you have a 3-4 defense and you're running a nickel set or a dime set, a lot of the times those outside linebackers that are considered your edge rushers are going to drop down and play defensive end in your defense. So it's almost like you're morphing your defense, depending on the formation, into a 4-3 front. So that's why you'll see Andrew Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner now playing at the defensive end positions. And then in the middle, you will see that not only we have Harrison Phillips, but we have one of our defensive ends who is a little bit lighter, who could be considered what? A 3 technique. Remember? I told you guys about that about 3 minutes ago, maybe 4, I don't know. But regardless, now see how it's all coming together now? I know I talk a lot about this, but it's important to know. So now one of your defensive ends, or 2 of them, who knows, maybe you have better defensive ends than defensive tackle, will play in the middle here in your nickel set or your dime set, and that is what the RDT is. Who is listed in the middle during your nickel sets and your dime formations? Which one is it? And it's going to be the guys who are better suited to stop the run, better suited to plug gaps up, and not exactly just pass rush the quarterback. That is what your RLE and RRE are. And again, this will take precedence. So if you have a guy who is an LE and you want him to be in on all situations, you better make sure that he's also the RLE, because this will take precedent over the standard LE setting in your depth chart. And just to show you what I mean is like what I'm talking about, it matches up. So Nick Bosa here is listed as left end, Leonard Floyd is right end, and you have Hargrave and Givens in the middle here. When I go to the specialty settings with the 49ers, who already run a 4-3, you'll see that Nick Bosa is the RLE, Leonard Floyd is the RLE, and then Hargrave and Givens are in the middle here, because that is what their forte is. That is what they are good at. Okay. And they're already in that position. So if you're looking for a defense to run that maybe doesn't have to have a ton of different players, and you don't have to have extra bodies to fit in different areas, and you just want a streamlined process, the 4-3 defense is going to be your go-to, because you're going to be running a 4-3 formation essentially all game long, whether it's base, nickel, dime, quarter, whatever. Now, there are some formations that use 3 down linemen in nickel, but depending on the situation, 2 of those guys are still going to be a 4-3 type of edge rusher. It's not going to be your big guy still in the middle there. It's just, they're just spaced out. They'll usually drop a defensive tackle off, and they'll have a defensive tackle and 2 defensive ends, but it's still primarily for the purpose of pass rushing. So you'll still have your pass rushers in that situation. Got it? Okay. So now we've explained the linebackers and the DNs and the defensive end and the defensive tackles, and you guys understand that. The last part about this is the middle linebacker, and we sort of already discussed this, but just to make sure that I hit the point home, your middle linebacker in a 3-4, it's going to be your number 1 and your number 2, so Cashman and Pace would be on the field, and then in a 4-3, it would just be Cashman that would be on the field, and Pace would essentially be the backup. Now, there is also a specialty setting for this position, and that is called the sub LB, or sub linebacker. Okay, and this is exactly what you think it is. It is for those nickel and dime packages when you're going into those pass coverage situations. Now, this is going to be any inside linebacker position. So outside linebackers don't even matter. The outside linebacker depth chart is not even a thing when you're not in base setting. It is only these 2 guys, or these 3 guys, depending on your situation. So if you are in nickel formation, it's going to look just like a defensive tackle. Cashman and Pace will be the 2 inside linebackers. And if you are in a dime setting where there's only one linebacker, it's going to be Cashman. And this is a lot of times where you'll see guys put in a safety. Like the Vikings ran Josh Metellus as a safety, a corner, and a linebacker last year. He was like the jack of all trades. If you want to do that, you could put Metellus in at, here at sub linebacker, and he would actually play linebacker in nickel sets for you. And this is where you can have some fun with it. If you have an outside linebacker that is good at pass coverage, they will show through, and you can move them up here, and they can play at those positions. But this is like, if you're looking for guys in this position, this is where you want to make sure their pass coverage grade is good, and the pass coverage archetype. If that is good, they will be good in this position. And now we get to the back end, which is the secondary. Corners, they work the same way as the receivers do. So this cornerback spot is your outside guys, okay? And then they have a specialty one, which is SLCB. See how it ties together? Just like SLWR for wide receiver, it's slot corner. And this works the same exact way. So the number one guy here is going to be the number one inside corner, and it will take precedence over the outside. So if I have Byron Murphy here as my number one slot, and I have him as my number one corner, oh, I can get there. Just give me a second to make it work. There we go. And I have him listed as my number one corner in a situation where we have an inside cornerback, like a nickel formation. Byron Murphy will be pulled from the outside and he'll be placed inside. And then Blackman will move up one, and Griffin, now who is listed as third, will come onto the field as the second corner. Okay. Safeties, self-explanatory, same as the quarterbacks and fullbacks and the tight ends. It's just whoever's listed here is your starter. And same with this. Now, what I will say though, is like I said, those specialty positions take precedence. So if you set a safety like Harrison Smith or Josh Metellus to a sub linebacker spot or a corner spot, even though it's not technically a sub safety spot, this still takes precedence. So in the same situation, if I was to do this and put Harrison Smith here, he will not be my starting strong safety in a nickel set. He will actually come down and play linebacker, and then Josh Metellus, who is listed as the second strong safety, will become the starting strong safety. I think you guys are, I know a lot of it, but I think it's all starting to come together now. You see how this works? So these specialty positions over here, they are the real meat and potatoes of the defense, or of the defense and the offense. It's with what you have set here is going to be what you're running a lot, because a lot of the times you're going to find yourself in nickel, at very least nickel, if not dime, because offenses are running 3-4 wide receiver sets on a regular basis. So this here, this whole section from SLCB up to 3DRB is probably more important than the entire depth chart is altogether. So make sure you understand it, make sure you set it up right, and you will be good to go with your franchise. And then just to go over it, because I mean, it's not anything too fancy, but I don't want to miss anything. Okay. Kicker, starting kicker. Punter, starting punter. Kick return, it's going to be, this is the farthest back guy is Nwangu. He'll be the farthest back guy. The guy in front of him or on the opposite side of him, it'll be Naylor. Punt returner, it's going to be number one is out there. KOS, I don't know if this means kickoff safety or something else. All I know is whoever is here is usually the guy who does all of your kickoffs. So if you want a particular guy to do all of your kickoffs, put him at KOS. And then long snapper. And well, that one is who does the long snapping on field goals and punts. And then we get into the specialty positions. So that is everything for the depth chart. Again, make sure you are setting up this whole section here all the way down to practice squad is so vital to making sure the right players on the field and you know what's going on with your team, because you don't want to get out there and you're like, why is this dude out here when I don't want him to be? Check this. I guarantee you it has something to do with this. Okay. So one last thing about depth chart before I show you quickly what formation subs can do is a tip for your lineups. Okay. So your playbook will have things that are, different. It's going to have maybe this side of the formation gets a lot of the routes. Maybe this side gets a lot of the red routes. And the red routes just mean primary, which means this is where you need to look first. The play is designed to go to this specific player on this specific play. Some of them have it more on this side of the formation. Some of them have more on this side. Some of them have a good mixture. Some are the slot receiver. Okay. So it's all three that are dependent on the playbook. So what I do, and I will use, I'll usually use either Madden School or huddle.gg for this. I will show you guys what I do, okay? So normally what I do is I just go to this website here. And like I said, there's huddle.gg, there's also Madden School. And all you're gonna do is go to the Playbooks database here. And if you click on it, you'll see that you can look at every single team that is shown here. Every single team, doesn't matter which one. And when you click on it, it's going to show you all of their formations, and it'll also show you all of the play arts. So I will look and see like, oh, okay, well, let's see. Single back ace, it looks like the left wide receiver, so this guy here with the red route, has 1, 2, 3 routes out of the plays where he is primary. And then the right receiver has 1, 2. So if I want one specific receiver to have more chances at a target in this formation, I want him to be listed on the left side. Okay, and I will do that for every single position. Now, if you don't want to go through all that hassle and you just want to decide where your receiver needs to be, and let's just say you've noticed your playbook always seems to play well with the right side wide receiver, go ahead and make your wide receiver that you want to be wide receiver 2, because the wide receiver 2 lines up on this side of the formation. So wide receiver 2 is here and wide receiver 1 is here. And now the reason that this is funny and why this is a tip is because when you go to the defensive side of things, Madden changed this a while back. It used to be your wide receiver 1 was on the right side that I just told you wide receiver 2 is, and wide receiver 2 was on the left side. A few years back, maybe 5 years ago now, they changed it to where they line up on the left side instead of the right side, but the corners did not change. So now still in this day and age, if you look, your corner number 1 lines up here and your corner 2 lines up here, which means that your corner 2 is always, or your corner 1 is lined up over wide receiver 2 in a base setting, and your corner 2 is lined up over wide receiver 1 in your base setting. So what I like to do for my offense is find what side of the field gets the most looks or looks the best when I'm trying to throw a ball, and that's where I'm going to put my favorite wide receiver, because I want him to be open the most. And now on defense, what I will do is I will actually swap my corners. And I do this all the time because most of the time it ends up working in my favor, but I will swap these corners so that way my corner 1 is lined up over my wide receiver 1. And that's just because Madden didn't flip this when they flipped the wide receivers. Now, a lot of this is subjective. A lot of this is based off of the formation. So this is not a foolproof way of fixing it. It's just something that I personally think works well for my situation. And it helps not let the wide receiver 1 just go off on a tangent even when he's not the intended receiver. Now let's talk about the formation subs. This shouldn't be too much longer, I promise, because the formation subs are pretty self-explanatory. I think most of you guys know what these are. I just want to show you maybe how the differences look with your depth chart alignments. So we're going to make some changes here quick, and then I will show you how different that looks. So we have Aaron Jones as the starting halfback, and then we have, we're going to put Chandler as the third down back, and we're going to put, we'll put Dwayne McBride as our power halfback. And then remember, we have Justin Jefferson as 1, and we also have him as 1 here in this situation. So now we'll see how that looks in the formation subs. So your formation subs are going to be under the manage staff. And when you go down and click on it, it's going to bring you to this screen here, and it's going to be set based off of what you have in your team schemes. So you have to make sure that the playbook you're running is here in team schemes. And this is where it becomes an issue when you have a custom book, because it doesn't care. So that's why I recommend, if you make a custom book, that you use a existing book that you already like and then fine tune it to your liking the most. If you want to add a formation or two, do that, but just know that you probably won't be able to edit the formations for those specific formations in here because it's not in the base book. This is just the base book you have set under your team schemes area. So now if we go to iForm, you can see it's very jumbled. I don't know how they messed this up, but they did. But it's hovering over the halfback. You can see Aaron Jones is the starter here in iForm close. If we go down to wing where there's more than one tight end, now you see that McBride is the starter, and McBride is our power halfback in the depth chart. And then if I go to shotgun here, you see now next to McCarthy is number 32. That is Ty Chandler. So now Ty Chandler comes in because this is a third down running back situation type of formation. And as you go down the list, you'll see that 32 and 33 come in and come out, you know, like that, because this is considered more of an in-between. It's not exactly just a passing type of situation. You have an inline tight end there with TJ Hawkinson. And then you'll see here now Ty Chandler's in again. And then you'll see once again it's Chandler and it's now Jones. So it's like a 2 to 3 to 1 split. It's going to be 2 or 3 of the formations for every 4 are going to be your third down running back. And then you're going to have a few of them where your normal halfback comes in. So that's why it's very, very important to make sure your third down running back is set properly, because if you don't have the right guy in there, he's never going to be on the field for shotgun. And let's face it, you're running shotgun a lot in today's day and age. Now let's look at the wide receivers. So you can see here that in this tight Y offsetting, you see there's 2 18s over there on the left side. And that is because Justin Jefferson is listed as the slot receiver, number 1, and he's listed as the outside receiver, number 1. But this is telling you this is going to take precedence. But just know, if you see a formation where there's the same number out there twice, like this, the inside guy is where it's going to be. And then you're going to see a different receiver on the outside here, because it's going to be whoever's number 2, right? It just moves them up. So 2 becomes 1, 3 becomes 2. And then the inside guy is your number 1 because you had him in both. See what I'm saying? So Justin Jefferson here in this particular formation would be listed here in the slot, and there would be a different guy on the outside because he is slot wide receiver 1. But he will still be listed as outside in your standard settings. You'll see here, he's number 1, so he's over on the left side. There's nothing to worry about there. But I like to use this to make sure that all of my stuff is set up properly. And sometimes there's formations where I want Jefferson in a certain situation and he's not there on the normal depth chart. So I'll flip him around and put him in the slot for this one. I'll put him in the right side for this one. And I'll just mix it up based off of how I like to play the game and how I like to run the playbook. So, and I think that should wrap it up. We've covered everything about the depth charts. There isn't too much else to cover. If it is, it's a little bit more detailed, and this is not the point of that video. So thank you guys so much for watching. If this is helping you out, or if you enjoyed the video, let me know down below in the comments. You can also let me know with the like or subscribe. That would be awesome as well. Also, turn on that bell notification. We'll be seeing some more videos like this drop soon, and I'm going to be getting back into the team builder stuff now that they seem to have fixed that. So if you've been waiting on teams, this will be coming soon. And we'll also be doing some more franchise. We have a big playoff matchup coming up next with the Panthers franchise. So if you have not checked that out, make sure you go and check that out as well. And I'll see you guys next time.